If you're a vehicle wrap installer who can't step off the tools, this video might be for you. If you're looking to grow and scale your vehicle wrap shop, this video is also for you. If your company is always busy, but the business isn't growing and you're repeating the same year over year on repeat like an insane cycle, then you might just be working on all the wrong stuff. My name is Brett Knott. I own Design It Wraps in Jacksonville, Florida. I've been in business now for 13 years in the vehicle wrap space. I have done every service under the sun, and I was the guy who could not let go. I was a control freak. I could not hire an installer that could do it better than me. I was the key man drowning, and I'll just do it myself. And then in this video, I want to show you the exact tweaks that I was able to not only raise profit, but also raise revenue without adding more work. Now, why should you take my word? I haven't set foot in my shop in almost 2 years, and it's currently operating in multi seven figures. I'm an absent owner. I live in Guadalajara, Mexico, and I'm not very special. I was a technician with zero leadership instincts. My mentor literally called me a busy bee. Over time, I learned how to install systems, not just wraps. And if you stay the key man, there is a cost. There is a cap to your income, and eventually you will burn out. So what can you expect from this video? First, we're going to help you pick your lane. Who are you going to serve? Who is your customer avatar, and what are you going to be known for best? And then possibly we're going to audit whether you need to kill the rest. Second, we're going to install 5 core systems so that you can stop leaking leads and you can run projects without you. Third, we're going to start learning how to price correctly so that every vehicle wrap that runs through your shop, there is an optimized system and we can actually have cars pay for your growth. Fourth, we're going to learn how to sell like a pro but not be incredibly salesy. And fifth, we're going to hire and ramp up the correct roles that you need to hire and create a system/audit so that you know who to hire based on your zone of genius. And that way you can get your time back fast. Now, before we get started, down below, there's going to be a link in the description. I've essentially provided a workbook that's 100% free to use. That way you can work on your business as we go through this. I'm also in that workbook going to make sure to include timestamps of exactly where the workbook applies so that you can actually jump through the workbook as you're needing to come back and check on things and not have to watch this entire video because it's going to be very lengthy. So without any ado, let's get started. Are you somebody that enjoys the car scene? You like exotic cars? You want to be more of like a boutique or spa type offer? Or do you want to do more business to business and offer commercial vehicle wraps and specialize in that? Now, the reason why this is our first section is because this applies to not only new vehicle wrap businesses, but also the ones that are existing. I honestly feel that a lot of shops are struggling to grow and scale because their offer is horizontal. And what I mean by that is, when I was first starting, I was Design It Wraps, or actually I was Design It Graphics and Signs, okay? And it was revenue above anything essentially. So I was doing pylon signs, monument signs, every permitted sign under the sun that I could possibly do outside of neon. Realtor signs, literally $10, $15 real estate writers. I mean, you name it, we did it. Magnets, etc. It was around the time that I believe it was around year 5, year 6. I was over it. I was tired of trying to find somebody that I could hire to do permitted signs for me, and I was tired of stocking all this inventory and all these materials. And what a lot of people don't realize is that inventory on the floor is money that you will never get back. So the more items you stock, the more dollars and waste that you just have sitting on the floor. Sometimes you have to kind of question yourself, is it actually worth it? And so around year 5 or 6 in my business, we decided that we were not going to offer signage anymore. And we went all vehicular, and in shop only. That was a massive improvement. I ended up adding window tint ceramic coatings and PPF in place of signage. Um, and so we went from, I believe we're about $900,000 in sales, and my signage at the time was about 450,000 in my complete revenue. So I cut my business in half essentially, but no longer did I have my crew leaving my shop or even myself leaving the shop for offsite installs. I didn't have to deal with governmental permitting processes or anything like that anymore that I was having a lot of trouble delegating, frankly. And we recovered a majority of that revenue, even the first year, just through window tint, ceramic coatings, and PPF. And we just sent out mass marketing campaigns to all of the existing customers, and everybody took really good to it um, based on our existing reputation in our area. Now, the reason why I caution or warn you or kind of want you just to question this, if you're struggling to grow, is it better to just keep adding services sideways, or is it better to go deeper into one service? It's been my thought that it's great for most shops to offer maybe one or two extra services. Like I don't think that PPF is a bad thing to have next to, say, a color change wrap. However, I do feel that a commercial wrap shop should not be doing um, PPFs like I was. And the reason why is when you go to your website, if you're really trying to grow the commercial leg of your business, is it confusing to the customer? Meaning, if you had a client with 20 or 30 vehicles, let's just say, and you're trying to land these bigger accounts in the commercial sector, does it look like you're really committed to servicing that customer and that you would be the best choice? Or are you just kind of interested in it, right? Like, it doesn't mean that you won't land it. I just feel that you're going to have a harder time actually landing some of the bigger commercial gigs just because you don't look like a specialist. You look like somebody that's just a small business. And that's not a problem. I'm just referring to the optics on your marketing. What is your message that your website and branding exudes? Um, just like I feel that a boutique shop really shouldn't be doing commercial wraps. Why? Because if I was a person with a high luxury vehicle, I don't want my guy. I basically don't want my car at a shop that's doing commercial wraps. Do they exist? Is it possible for you to do them? Yes. Obviously, a color change person can do a commercial wrap for the most part. Um, as far as coverage, trimming, etc. I have no qualms with that. I'm not saying that it can't be done, but we're not talking about you doing everything. We're talking about growing and scaling a business and simplicity. We're talking about the reason why I cut signs was because I didn't have to have like this Swiss Army knife of positions anymore. Whenever I went from commercial wrap, PPF, ceramic coating, and tint, I then had to have like a tinter on staff. I had a PPF installer on staff. I had me for commercial wrap, but I also was the PPF installer. Like, it was a mess. And I ended up being the flex role. And that's what a lot of you guys are doing is you end up being the flex role. And so you end up working the extra hours and you can never work on your business because you're too busy flexing here and there and just jumping around being the firefighter in your business. And what's interesting is being the firefighter is a weird form of validation. You essentially are creating the problem for you then to solve your own problem, which is like weird, right? And that's just what I saw myself doing. Your results may be different. But who are you drawn to do business with? I would say like 75% focus, even if you're new, into one lane. I would specialize and I would not diversify. frankly. I would build really great relationships with, let's just say, if you're a commercial sector, I would build great relationships with the color change sector and let them specialize in color changes, and then they send you all the commercial work potentially. It might not work out that way. It might. I mean, depends on your relationship. We've had plenty of color change shops in my market that have sent us the commercial work, no problem. Now, once you've identified like really what lights you up, that's your first identifier as to who you should be serving. Second, we're going to look at the service model. So an example of that would be when I was doing PPF, I never did exotics. I did PPF for probably it was actually 8 years total. Yeah. Okay. So I did PPF for a total of 8 years, but we only did new vehicles like F350s and F150s and Mazda 3s. Like, we just wanted to take care of the new vehicle market. I was not interested in luxury. And most of that was because I didn't have a specialist to work on, say, a Ferrari or a Lamborghini. Albeit some of those cars are not as hard as the price that they're worth, but I didn't have somebody that I could really trust to go trimming on these type of vehicles for my liability exposure. And so that meant that I would have to do it all. What you're going to be known for, then we need to make sure to look at our branding and ensure that it matches. What is your positioning going to be? How are you going to compete? I never sold a single PPF with the idea of, hey, this is going to be perfect. Hey, all of your edges are going to be wrapped. I explicitly did expel kits and we installed them to a very high level. The corners were dialed still. We extended some edges, but not others. We looked at the car, we went over the car with the client, and we showed them exactly what expectation would be. And if it didn't match the expectations, then we let the customer know who could meet those expectations, and we would just send them that way. So what are you going to be known for, and how are you going to position your business? And make sure that you have video and branding on your website and on your Google and etc., your sales process that matches exactly how you're going to position your business. Now, next, you got to identify your ambition. Are you trying to scale and grow a business and create generational wealth? Or are you just building a lifestyle business? Both are fine. It depends on what your outlook on life is, what your goals are, and also they can change. But for right now, in the next 5 years, how big do you want this to come? Are you going to be a single location, or are you going to be a multi-bay operation? Are you going to own your building eventually, or are you solely going to lease? Are you going to potentially try to franchise model, or are you going to stay solo or build a team? I highly recommend that if you're going to be a solo installer, that you at least try to hire people beneath you to be a successor, because eventually it will cost you dearly. Our chapter 2 is defining your vision framework. And I've created what's called the WRAP framework. And let's start with your why. This is by far the most important thing. I'm sure some of you guys have heard Simon Sinek talk about finding your why. Possibly you've even read his book. But what is your core purpose? I didn't realize, I was so fortunate that I had the mentor that I did. Literally the first questions he asked me after we signed our incorporation documents was, what do you want? What does it look like? And how are you going to get there? And I literally just looked at him. I was like, dude, I'm 23. I could care less. And, over time, he kept asking me that question. And that's a hard question. Like, if you really stop for a minute and ignore all distractions, what do you want? What does it look like? And how are you going to get there? That is a hard question to answer. And really the simplified version is, why are you doing this? And so, you know, why are you starting your vehicle wrap business? I started a wrap business purely just because an old man believed in me and allowed me the opportunity to start my own thing and was willing to teach me business. So that was how I started. I didn't have a why. I just got lucky. I worked hard. I had great ethic, and I had the opportunity arise that I could start this business, right? But I was lost. And what drives you? Is it that you have a family? Are you going to have a family? Are you trying to create freedom for yourself? Um, you know, are you just, or, many wrap installers are, it's pretty common in the blue collar world for us to just like think we can run a business better than our boss. So we start the business because we can install better than the boss can, and they can't do it like me, and they won't operate well without me, blah, blah, blah. And yet they seem to, for some reason, continue to grow. And you leave and start your business to become a solopreneur for the rest of your life. Why are you doing this? I want to share my a window into my why, and I hope it can inspire you because, like I said, when I was 23, I could care less. Now I'm 37. And what's weird is you don't think that you need to really think about your why until your time card gets called. I've had countless conversations with people that are in their 50s that have been installing wrap or stickers or working with their hands for 20 plus years, and Father Time got a hold of them, and you can't go back. And now you're in like, oh shit, at some point I need to retire mode, or, I need to figure out how to gain some leverage on this so that I at least can keep making a living. Because if you didn't save your retirement, then you're really in a bad time. So my why is I want to be able to pay for my mom's retirement. That's my biggest why. So I would like to make enough money that my mom can retire. And that's because she had a divorce and she walked away from all of her savings and earnings. Now, that was her choice and that was her fault. But that is one big, massive why I do that. Now, that's not a personal why. Now, my personal why at this point has massively changed. My personal why was I had a 65-year-old man bring me under his wing, train me business, and then 7 years in, I go buy him out. And when I bought him out, I owed him a very large sum of money because I misjudged my worth when we incorporated the business. I gave him 70% of the business. And my mentor always gave me exactly what I asked for, and I never got a penny more. And so when I finally bought him, I was like, hey, I owe you X, but my credit's not good enough. So do you want to owner finance your buyout? And he sold the business to me for $25. And I owed him multi six figures. So he sold me the business for $25, but he made me make one promise that if I ever had the opportunity to help other people and be of service and value to others, that I would do so. And so the reason why I grow my business and I don't hold this squeegee anymore, like I look at this squeegee as very symbolic. This squeegee made me a lot of money. Not this one specifically. I actually prefer the 3M Golds, but in Mexico, I don't really have any. So I made a lot of money with this. But the perspective flip that I shifted to was I want to share this to other people. I want to help inspire people to come work for me and grow and develop their skills so that they can have some of the freedoms and opportunity that this squeegee gave me. And that became my why. That's why I deal with the struggles and why I continue to push and grow and develop. And the reason why I live the lifestyle that I do is because I want to be able to show my guys the opportunities that can happen, not because I'm just taking profits off their back to do whatever. Um, I've retained my entire team because of the culture and the why and the vision that we have during this process of me removing myself from the business. That's how strong our why is. My whole team knows that eventually we would like to sell the business. We don't know what that looks like yet, but they know. And they know the opportunities that can come with that, that there's leaders that are needed in the business in order to get to that point to sell. So there's promotion opportunities. There's no ceiling in my business because of my vision. Now, the next step on the WRAP framework is results. So what measurable results define this success? What are your revenue targets? How many numbers of vehicle wraps do you need to do per year, month, day, week, etc.? How much market share do you want in your city? What is the overall customer satisfaction in your area? I think we like to think that we all do a good job, but do we really know? So R stands for results. A is apply. So what is your execution strategy going to be? How are you going to apply this vision? What is going to be your approach and methodology? These actions that you're going to be taking, you need to look at them quarterly with the team, and you need to be making sure that the actions that the team is making aligns with the vision. It's just not fluff. It's not like, oh, cool, let's put core values in, and then here's our vision for success and freedom, but then we never do anything, and we just repeat the same quarter over quarter, and there's no progress. So we need to apply the execution strategy in our business. And then P is prep, which stands for, or, is in place for our foundation and values. The prep work, their values, the culture, the non-negotiables. What is the standard going to be in your business? Because the number one problem, this actually gets me really actually going. The number one problem in most wrap businesses and or small businesses in general, not just vehicle wrap businesses, is the standards that you hold yourself to. You do realize that you letting the customer bring you a job late and you working at night after hours and avoiding your family just means that you have no standards for yourself? Have you ever thought about that? That your standards for yourself are so low compared to the standards that you're willing to give to everybody else. So elevate your standards. What is your standards going to be? What will you tolerate and what will you not tolerate? What type of employees will you hire? What are their standards are going to be? What is the standard for the output of time in which it takes to deliver a unit or a vehicle? If it's 2 business days, is it really being tracked, and is it actually taking us 3? And then do we just allow it to happen over and over and over because we can't find any good help? So what is the values and the culture and the non-negotiables going to be for your business? Our very first core system that you're going to need in your business, that whether you need to add and or audit, is going to be your quoting and pricing system. I've also included a website URL in the workbook that is wrapquotepro.com. It's a little more involved, but at the same time, I try to simplify it as close as possible. I have multiple calculators in there. I have a wall wrap calculator, a vehicle wrap calculator, a custom object calculator currently. I do have a flat glass calculator I'm working on, but I'm trying to work on the optimizer for panels. very similar to, say, TentWiz. They did a really good job on doing the linear footage and calculating which roll width you have and calculating inventory. But on wrapquotepro.com, it's free. You just put in your login, and then I have a video. I'll have the URL to how to use it in the workbook, but you essentially can quote wall wraps, and it'll tell you literally like if 48, 54, or 60-inch roll is best, and it'll tell you how many panels and everything, to where it calculates for all the waste that you might have on that project. On the vehicle wrap calculator on WrapQuote Pro, it's taking the Pro Vehicle Outlines templates. It's adding approximately 15 to 20% waste to the unit for your paneling, and is an approximation of what the total square foot for the printed product would be on the vehicle. So it should get you pretty darn close if for some reason you don't have quoting materials. Now, I've already done a deep dive video on pricing. So again, just watch that video specifically, and it'll help you a lot. Now, the second thing that you're going to need is some form of project management. Now, a lot of people use Trello. A lot of people use Monday.com. Naturally, I'm going to plug Torque CRM, and I'll explain why in a minute. ShopFox is pretty good. I've seen a couple people use Jobber. It's kind of weird, but Jobber's not too bad. The downside of Jobber is the cost per user gets pretty significant after a while. I know a landscaper that was using it. It was like $5,000 a month. But what CRM you use is irrelevant. The most important thing is that you have identified the process in your business first. Separate the system. So you have systems and processes. Separate the system and the process. You need to identify what happens when a customer calls me. What do I want to do? What message do I need to send out as a follow-up? When do I send it out as a follow-up? Do I send out when a new lead comes in? Do I send out a welcome packet? What is inside the welcome packet? What is what to expect? Who is design it, etc. So like, what email campaigns are you going to do to nurture the customer? Like, these are massive steps of the process that are just going to greatly increase the customer experience to close more deals. And when a customer drops off their vehicle, what is the check-in process? How do we move it from the front to the back of the shop? When the installer is done with the vehicle, what is their process to check out that vehicle so that we can hold them accountable to the install that they provided? Do we put warranty information in the door jamb? What is my process in my shop? It needs to be clearly defined, and it needs to be put into like an app like Lucid Chart. Highly recommend something along the lines of like Lucid Chart or some form of like Figma or whiteboard application, so that you can proactively draw out the map of your business. And I'll put an example here of me mapping out my business, but map out your whole business in every situation for the most part, and you need to keep adding to it over time. Like, it's a labor of love that you're going to keep building upon. Now, the reason why I recommend Torque CRM is mostly because we are also in the wrap industry, so we speak your language. The number one reason why Torque CRM even came to exist is because I got tired of talking to white collar companies, and I would say, hey, I would really like this feature. And they're like, you don't need that. I would get that with ShopFox sometimes. Like, like, you think you want that, but you don't really need that. You would be like, oh yeah, just wait, we're developing a tool for that. And it'd be like 2 years later, it's like, where is it at? If you sign up for Trello today, you open it up and it's just like one column. Like, nothing's there. And that's why the process matters before the system, because if you at least have the process, then you have an outline of how you can build the system out. And I actually have a full video on the Wrap Shop Talk YouTube where I actually go in on Trello, if that's what you would like to use, and show you how I would build it out. So if you'd like that, I'll put the link into the workbook as well for you to proactively go check that out. But with Torque, everything's already pre-built out. All the sequencing, the word tracks, the follow-up messaging, it's all based on, originally my shop, and then now we have, a multitude of shops, probably close to like 80 shops that we have discussed, built stuff for, and seen data points within businesses. And we kind of rounded it off to where it's like, okay, here's a really great baseline template that you could literally like get into the ecosystem and immediately jumpstart and get going. It's got the sales process outlined, design process outlined. It has the production for your print team, your install process, and even accounts receivable and AR and shipping processes. So that is the biggest reason why we got interested in building, say, something like Torque CRM. So if you need any advice on that, just reach out to me. But Trello is fantastic. If Trello had a few things that I wanted, it would have never happened. Torque would not exist. But yeah, Trello is great for getting going. And I mean, hell, even John Duver uses Trello, and his shop's much larger than my business. So that is my point is, albeit I'm biased towards Torque, at the end of the day, whatever works for you is the best software to use, period. But remember the principle of operating your processes. The reason why John's Trello is so damn good is because John has spent hours, his team has spent hours cultivating process first. Once you have the process, the system almost kind of doesn't matter. It's just, do you like the UI, and then do you have the time to develop everything? Material inventory management. So I remember, I'm gonna tell you a funny story, and this is where my mentor kicked me in the shin. But if you buy a roll of material and that material is on the floor, you will never technically get that money back. Now, it seems weird, but every time you buy something for inventory, whether it be inventory for tools or materials that are going under the table until you pull it to be produced, odds are you have to replace it every time you use it, right? So if you have 5 rolls on the floor, then you always pretty much have to have 5 rolls on the floor. And so that's, however many dollars, $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 for those kits that you will never put back in your pocket. So there is a balancing act on how much inventory you need to be holding. And my rule of thumb has always been that if I had an emergency job tomorrow, I want to always be able to facilitate it, to where we don't lose opportunity. So when I was a smaller shop, I'd say sub 500K, I would keep 2-3 extra rolls. And the minute we pulled one roll, it would get replaced automatically Toyota style. Now, Matt Jonathan came up with an amazing spreadsheet. I will make sure that it is included in the workbook. If it is not in the workbook for some reason and doesn't make the cut, I will make sure that it will be in the link in the description of this video. But Matt's system is genius. So if you get the little speed clips, there's the red clips and green clips, right? Because inventory for rolled products is incredibly difficult. And on this spreadsheet, it tells you how to weigh the roll. So Matt went in and weighed the cores of like a multitude of different brands and averaged out for each brand what the core weight was. And then you can check it over again and adjust the math on the spreadsheet. But essentially, everything would be green clip. Let's just say everything's at full roll. in this theoretical. And whenever you pull it off of the wall and you put it on the printer, the moment that you touch that roll, you red clip it. And at Friday, whatever rolls, so you count your total rolls that you have left. So if you have 5 under the table, 1 on the wall, and you happen to burn through a roll, then you would say, hey, we have 1 on the wall and 4 boxes, cool, so that's your total length. But then on the red clip, you weigh it, and whatever weight you have, you put into the spreadsheet, and it will literally tell you within 3 to 5 feet the exact linear footage that you have on that roll. And then we also in the spreadsheet have what is the cost per linear foot of that material, and it'll show you how many dollars you have sitting on the floor. And that way you can kind of play with your months and even your year for your taxes. And, you know, I'm not giving tax advice. You need to talk to a CPA for this, but of how you can kind of manipulate things to benefit you on the tax component. But that is by far one of the best inventory plays that I have seen. And I shout out Matt Jonathan with Rev Designs in New Mexico. He's been a team member with us at Torque, and his inventory system is phenomenal. The last thing on our systems before scale module is document everything. I firmly believe that if you're a solo installer now with AI, you should download loom.com. It's super cheap. How much is it? I just checked. Loom.com is only $10 a month. And the cool thing about Loom is it doesn't store the data on your phone. So like if you're recording a lot of data, when you actually start doing a lot of video stuff, you start to realize like, man, I got to organize all these video files. But it will automatically transcribe a header for you based on the subject matter of the video. But you can get a stand with a phone and you just literally take it everywhere with you. And let's just say you're installing a bumper, for example, and you're a solopreneur at this point. And or it doesn't matter if you don't have SOPs and you're just still stuck as the installer, then do this as well. But you take the tripod, you take the camera, you hit record on Loom, and you record a video. But while you're recording, you do it Justin Pate style, where you're talking out loud while you're installing whatever it is. Or let's just say you're breaking down a car and you have a tear down SOP that you need to make for a mid-roof transit. And maybe there's a particular component like that's a little difficult, or hey, we want to remove these door handles, but this particular one's a little more difficult. Here's the outline. You're going to talk out loud why it's difficult, what to look out for, etc. And on Loom, it will literally transcribe the entire thing. You can take that transcription, plug it into ChatGPT or Claude, and just say, hey, can you create a playbook for this SOP based on this vehicle subject matter? And you just keep adding documents that way. And legitimately, eventually, you'll have your entire business outlined. And then when you go to hire somebody, at the very least, if you're not available to train them and or have a good training process in place, you can say resort to Loom, and you can search through all the videos. So if you go back and just say how to disassemble the Dodge Ram 1500 Transit or cargo van, then they can search to see if it even exists in the database. So highly recommend Loom for systems and processes. It is a game changer and very cheap and inexpensive. So what is gross profit margin? It's actually very simple. It's just subtraction. So it is your revenue minus your total cost of goods sold. So if you've never heard of cost of goods sold before, or COGS, it essentially is all of the materials and the labor that was required to facilitate the project. So because we're a service-based business, if you are to just Google gross profit, in many cases it would not include labor. But because we have a tangible skill that is required to necessarily design and also install the product, it needs to be included on your gross profit margin scenario. And an example of your direct cost or cost of goods sold would be vinyl material cost, the application of film or laminate from the installer. This can be attributed either in the hourly rate, commission rate, or percentage rate. The design time in which it takes to create the artwork that would not exist without the designer. So that is a part of the cost of goods sold component. And also installation supplies such as squeegees, knives, cleaning supplies used, etc. What is not included in your gross profit or cost of goods sold is your rent, your plotter, any form of depreciation on your assets, office staff salaries, insurance, and your marketing expenses. These are just considered pure overhead, and that is where you take your gross profit margin minus your overhead and create your net profit for your business. So I'm going to break down a couple demonstrations of how gross profit will affect you. And then from there, you will need to use the workbook to identify where maybe you could have some benefit and or increases to your gross profit within your business. So example one is going to be a full vehicle wrap. Let's just use commercial as the example. And let's just say the customer is going to pay you $4,000. And the material cost for, let's just say, Avery 1105 and 1360Z lamb is approximately $600. Your install labor, you have a singular installer and or two installers at $25 an hour, and the total allocation of labor towards the project is 16 hours. Your design time, including all of the setup and including not only the proofing process, but also the setup of the files to be sent to the printer, let's just attribute 10 hours. And that means that your total cost of goods sold would be $1,250. Your gross profit would be $2,750, meaning that your gross margin would be 68.75%. However, let's do a breakdown. If you were to increase your price to $4,500 on example 2. So the customer is going to pay you $4,500. The material cost stays the same at $600. Your installer rate is the same and your design labor rate is the same. You are now at a gross profit of $3,250. This means that you're at an effective 72.2 gross profit percent. Now, that might not seem like there is a massive difference factor of 4%. However, let me explain. So theoretically, let's just do some fictitious math here to drive a point home. And you're already $1 million shop and you're at a 15% net profit on said $1 million. And that would basically mean that your take home would be $150,000 per year after all of your overhead expenses are allocated. Now, if you were to shift to $4,500, your new take home, just because you modified your price by $500, would be $190,000. So that differential of a $500 per unit differential is costing you $40,000 per year based on this math. Now, obviously, this is to drive a point, but let's be real. Honestly, there's $500 worth of waste on most of our install projects, whether it be how fast were we able to get the vehicle in, how efficient were we at prepping on the vehicle, or did we not tell the client to wash the vehicle before it was dropped off and we have to wash it ourselves now. Maybe you're not charging for design time. Maybe your installers are taking greater than 16 hours to install each unit, and they're taking like 24 hours per unit in all actuality. The point is $500 can make or break your business tremendously, especially if you're already stretched on time. You most likely have a great deal of inefficiencies, And if you can just start running the numbers on these things and find out where the hole in the bucket is, you can start to actually let the bucket fill up with water, aka money, into your bank account, so that you can start making some changes within your business. So there's two massive levers that we can pull on in our vehicle wrap shops. We can reduce our costs, and this looks like maybe negotiating better material prices with your suppliers, reduce waste through better measurements and cutting to where we can reduce the total allocation of materials per project or per unit, so that it's not going into the trash can. We can improve our installer efficiency through training. We can use a, if you're using like a flexi, you can use, say, Onyx or something better to nest the print runs a little better, to optimize your material usage. But we can also increase our prices. We can position ourselves as more of a premier install. It's interesting that in our industry, most people seem to really value we use quality materials and we have the best install angle, but we also then lack confidence in billing the price towards our customers as a full service shop that we need to, just because we aren't actually sure why we arrived at the price we're at. Once you've gone through and identified your gross profit metrics, then you know exactly why your price is $4,000 or $4,500 or $5,000 for that said unit, or exactly why you arrived at $13, $14, or $15 a square foot. And you will build on value, not on commodity, and stand firm on the price and why you are even giving it to the customer in the first place. Another big thing that a lot of people need to potentially consider would be things that aren't massive ROIs that we also spend a great deal of amount of time on. So like in the commercial sector, wrapping door handles, mirrors, bumpers when they're chrome, um, your roof wrap installs, things like this. There's not a massive ROI for the customer, but like wrapping door handles takes a massive amount of time. Let's make sure that we're at least billing for the option to, would you like fries with that? And upgrade the client from no handles to handles so that you're actually making, let's just call it $150 or $200 at $50 per door handle. This again, if $500 dramatically changed everything, then you don't even necessarily need to raise your prices. What if you just cut the door handles out of the install? So this is where I'm trying to get you to identify where the waste is. I just used $500 as an example because it's relative to so many different things that we can do. You could pretty much increase your install rate removing handles and mirrors and not having to do those, and put more units out to the customer, effectively increasing your net profit just because you're more efficient. So that's a great example of increasing your prices or just making sure that you're charging a la carte for specific things. If you're gonna do cut and drop, make sure you're billing if the customer wants it wrapped into the recesses of the windows, so that you can either, one, pay for the liability exposure that you're adding for an installer having to work those channels in. Yeah, I can do it too, but it's just not efficient for the business. So make sure that you're billing the customer accordingly if they happen to want, they don't want the white gap on the window surround. Now, I want to address, to kind of close this out, wrap specific fears when pricing, such as my competitor might charge less, or it's just vinyl and labor, and or customers might go somewhere else. I actually think that we should consider selling on marketing ROI. Quality installation prevents costly failures, and your expertise might actually save them from amateur mistakes. Somebody cutting on a paint job is massively concerning. That's going to cost a client a lot. So like our shop, for example, we even have gone as deep as understanding the typical revenue per day per service on most commercial units, to where when a customer is trying to beat us up over $500, it's like, hey, listen, understand, but you're stepping over pennies to pick up, or you're stepping over dollars to pick up pennies. What do I mean? And they're like, well, what do you mean? I was like, well, your vehicle generates X dollars per day. And if our goal is to reduce waste from doing these couple of things, then we're actually saving you 2, 3, 4, potentially even 5 business days. That's actually going to cost you, let's just say $5,000 a day. So I'm actually saving you $25,000 for that $500 differential. It's a different conversation when you actually understand your value proposition. So it's okay to charge more. Make sure you understand why, and that way you can use it during your sales process. So real fast to recap, if you're charging this fictitious $4,000 per unit versus $4,500 a unit, and if all things were the same, you work the same amount of days per year, and it takes you approximately 3 business days per unit, then you would be able to have the capacity of 73 units. And that means that the annual difference between the two shops would be about $36,000. So let's just say, theoretically, if you did lose some jobs, how many jobs could you lose that year and still make the same as the other shop? Well, I broke it down, and if you automatically have essentially 8 jobs that you could lose entirely and still be break even with the customer. Now, that might feel a little odd. That might feel as if, like, man, that's actually kind of scary. But the thing that you don't realize is that with the time saved, that you didn't do those 8 vehicles, you actually gained 24 business days back a year. That you could be doing marketing, you could be doing training, you could be doing a whole lot of other things versus making less money, that eventually will compound and greatly push your business forward. So, make sure to, go in, like, calculate your gross margin on your last 10 jobs. Try to identify what material cost per square foot is going to be in your business. Track actual install hours versus guessing or hoping, and start testing raising your prices, by 10% or so on your next 5 quotes. And just monitor the services that have the highest profit margins so that you can eliminate the jobs that are not generating you actual money or net profit on the bottom line. So, like, this is the difference between you making a lot of revenue and actually having a business that can afford to continue to market, to continue to hire staff, continue to take you on vacations, etc. You need profit in your business in order to grow and scale. Now, this next section, we've been talking about profit, but we need sales. We need to get units in the door, because it doesn't matter what your price is, your effective expense rate is. If you don't have sales and or marketing giving you leads for you to close and filling in your calendar, it's all irrelevant. So the one thing that I want everybody to understand is it's your job to make sure that people know about you. And you need to stop waiting for magic to happen and start actually building authority in your specific demographic and or market. People don't know you exist. Look at Paradox the Rapper. Look at any of these Instagram specialists that have a huge following. They're not slow. They have a multitude of work. And you could even argue that you're a better installer, better quality, better anything that you want to know. It's not about how good you are, it's about how known you are. And so I heard this from one of the rappers on a different podcast. He said that attention is currency. And that's 100% a fact. So what are you doing to market your business? So let's go through and identify what we can do and what you might not be doing or what you should be doing based on a couple of things. So section 1 of this area is going to be lead generation systems. And this is where 80% of vehicle wrap shops really drop the ball. We're really great installers, but we're kind of terrible at sales. And I want to show you basically the exact systems that I've used to be able to be booked out 6, sometimes even 8 weeks out, to make our pipeline a lot more predictable, and also where we can turn the dial whenever we do hire that extra staff member. Then we really only have like a 2 or 3 month runway to get back to our initial profitability for that, because all you have to do is just turn the dial. Now, the number one place for you to put efforts into by far is your Google My Business. It's boring, it's not fun, it's just fundamental. It's not as pretty as your Facebook and your Instagram, but everybody is on Google, everybody does a search, vehicle wraps near me, commercial wraps near me, whatever keywords are like kind of trending in your area. This is where most cases you're going to get found, is based on the Google Map Pack. Now, what you need to do is do a optimization checklist. I will make sure in the workbook it will have examples of what you can do, but make sure whatever your primary revenue generator is, the primary service. So vehicle wrapping service, window tinting service. I don't believe there's anything for paint protection yet, but window tinting service and or auto detailing supply, I believe is what it's called, might be the best option for you. But play with that and identify how clients are finding you. You can actually go into the Google search analytics under your Google My Business profile and look at the exact keywords that clients are finding you by. But that will also tell you potentially what you're not ranking for as well. Make sure to complete every field on the Google. If at the top of your Google My Business pack, it says that you are not complete or needs more information, that is a massive hit immediately to the SEO, or the likelihood that Google's going to show you as the top profile, because you haven't even updated all of the things that they're requiring of you, and they will dock you for that. One of the biggest things that I've been doing recently is a photo strategy with updates. So when you go to your Google My Business, always show a completed photo, or even a before and after, or just some pretty pictures of the work that's completed. One step further is to rename the file with the keywords that you're going after. So in our cases, we're saying like Ranger design dash upfitting dash commercial vehicle dash fleet graphics. So Google on the back end, they don't really see the photo per se, but they see what the photo is named as, and it'll actually give you some small kudos, if you will, towards your ranking. The biggest thing that you can do is get reviews. So create some form of review process that closes out the sale. It is shown over and over and over time again. I'll even give you a short story after explaining, but if you don't get your 5-star review whenever you're checking out with a customer, the likelihood that they're going to give it to you after they've already left is greatly diminished. I have a customer where we have the 3 locations, and that means that my reviews were kind of split across all 3, right? And I noticed one of my customers hasn't left me a review that's been doing, they've probably done 50 vehicles with me, right? And I sent them out a review request, and instead of giving me a 5-star review, they just said, "Hey, are you still wanting to do our other vehicle?" And I'm just like, can you just leave me a 5-star review? I've crushed it for you for 10 years. But it's my fault because we've just never actually asked for the review upon closing out the sale. There are some things that you can do to incentivize, but be very, very, very careful, because technically most of them are against terms of service with Google, and it can get you in trouble where they will actually strip you of reviews. But you can do things such as like a credit towards a future project, if you will. You can do cash back. I'm not a fan of cash back. I prefer to do cash towards the next project, increasing the lifetime value of the customer, etc. So however you want to incentivize the customer to leave you that 5-star review, but the best way is just like while they're all hopped up on dopamine of the car being modified or enhanced by your service, ask for the review at that moment. For when we did window tint, we used to give cans of spray away, 4 or 5-star review where it was for cleaning up their windows. You know, you need to post updates on your Google My Business at least twice a week using keyword rich generated content where you're making sure to say, we completed this vehicle wrap, or window tinting done in our county, so on and so forth, to where like you're creating citations and also giving and feeding Google data that you service this area, and then you're creating relevancy. At the end of the day, what is Google selling? They're selling the relevant answers. So that's what they're trying to solve for when they're doing optimization scores. Is this business actually relevant to the client's question? Are they actually the answer? And then that's the order that you are ranked as. There is a Q&A section. I personally haven't done one myself here, but I would recommend filling it out, and I need to do that myself. Now, next would be some form of like referral program or structure. So one of the things that you can do is, it's really interesting. Referral programs and or affiliate type setups are not really used for some reason, but it can be leveraged. And when you finally get that one referrer that is sending you a ton of business, is highly effective. So one of the things that I did on a referral program was, you'll hear a lot of people in the tent and clear brow world that will try to get into, say, the dealerships, right? The problem with dealerships is they usually try to take all the margin for themselves and leave you with not a lot in most cases. So I never went after the dealership itself. Instead, I went after the dealer sales guys. And I worked with them on a one-on-one basis. And essentially I created like a little acrylic standee that would stand on their desk with a QR code. And I built a landing page for each one of the sales reps. And that way, whenever they were selling a vehicle, whether it be retail or commercial, they would just be like, yeah, check out, scan this QR code and reach out to them. They're great for the services that you're looking to have done on your vehicle. They wouldn't even push the sale. They would just recommend us, right? Because I was going to a specific dedicated landing page, I could see how many visitors would go to that page. I could also see the individual inputs or opt-ins that that sales rep was generating me. And then I would quantify what was the total revenue that that created for me, and I would write them a check and bring it into them every 2 weeks. And it would actually incentivize the other dealers, like, whoa, why is Vince getting a $500 check and I didn't get one? And it's like, well, he's got this little standee and it generated me $5,000 worth of work. So I want to give him $500 in thanks for the work he generated for me. This was highly effective in my area. I had 3 dealerships in a small area, and I had standees at all 3 for the individual sales reps. Cost me nothing. I got to keep my prices exactly what it was, and it's highly effective. With business to business, like referring each other, in many cases, people, they like to just ask for the referral. So like whenever you've completed the commercial wrap, call the client, hey, as you know, as a small business, we operate greatly off of word of mouth. Or is there, 1 or 2 people in your network that would benefit greatly from us providing our service for them? And it's like, yeah, Johnny. It's like, cool. Do you mind texting me with a 3-way conversation and introduce him to me? And then you take that conversation and you go off platform to where you're not bothering the referrer, but then you try to build a relationship that way. But that way it's a lukewarm interaction versus a cold, like, hey, we did work for Billy Bob and he told me that you were needing my service. Like, it's just much better for them to introduce you. Who are some people that are great for referral programs? I mean, dealerships, body shops, detail shops, detailers. I don't know many wrap shops that do detailing, but the vehicles in many cases are getting washed, and that's also where the degrading of the film can happen even faster if they're using harsh chemicals and or bad processes. So if you have a really good detailer in your area that you could just refer the work to automatically, then that person could probably refer jobs back to you that aren't in your ecosystem, creating a nice little circle of money. Fleet managers are great, but really hard to get. Insurance agents are so-so, mostly because they're not very, many of them operate a lot like a realtor, to where they're not very friendly for relationships. You can create different incentive structures such as cash or service credit. And then the most important thing is using some form of tracking system, because if somebody's sending you a ton of referrals and you don't have a way to report that, and there's ever a breach in communication, then that person is just going to stop referring, because they're like, man, you told me you were going to give me X, Y, but like I can see clearly, like I'm not going to receive anything because you forgot, right? So there's a really good software that's standalone called First Promoter, and it creates individual dashboards. It's kind of hard to use, but like once you get it dialed in, it's like automatic. Like it's crazy. It'll even handle the payouts immediately. Strategic partnerships are a great way to generate leads, and I'm going to use more of a story or an example for this. That there was a group of service providers, and just about every town or county has some form of like Facebook or Instagram, like rants or raves and reviews, or like places where people post classifieds, etc. And there was like 10 or 15 people that created like this handshake agreement that we're just going to refer each other. And no lie, like they they would send so much work my way. If it was like, I need a vehicle wrap in this county, it was just design it, design it, design it, design it. And then you had like mob mentality, like nobody wanted to be like against the crowd. It was like, just design it. It was crazy. And that's kind of how we took over the back end group section of Facebook. Um, I see a lot of people, like we did an interview with Justin Tran out of the Jacksonville market, where he was doing color changes, but he infiltrated all the car clubs, and he just did specific perks for the car clubs. And then over time, those car clubs strategically were just like, Justin, 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 who, I need a hood wrap, Justin, 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 I need a color change, Justin, Justin. Like, it's insane how he took over the back end by being very strategic on who he partnered with, on the retail side, and then on my side, on the commercial sectors, just teamed up with other home service providers, and we just created a nice big circle where we always referred each other for the most part. Now, obviously, with us on the commercial side, it gets very difficult. So I wouldn't ever just refer one HVAC place. I would just refer all of my guys, and then that way it was reciprocal, and eventually they would usually refer people back to us as well on the Facebook groups. So next you have cold outreach. Cold outreach seems to be the one thing that a lot of people won't do. But like even just recently, I've had 2 or 3 customers that's really dedicated some time to cold outreach, and they're just like, man, this is phenomenal. It's a numbers game. It's a very low ratio of close, but sometimes there's some right place, right time. And one of my buddies that I talked to quite a bit just closed 50 units by going out and cold prospecting in a 10-mile radius of his shop. And by the way, I believe he said there's like 10 or 15 shops in that 10-mile radius of him as well. And guess what they're not doing? They're too busy in the bay installing, most likely, and or just hoping for jobs to come their way, whereas he's proactively going out, and he scored a 50 vehicle fleet that way. Um, that's going to keep him busy for a little while. So cold outreach is where you can find your holy grail customers. And there's a couple of reasons for that. Your really big customers already have a guy, and you just need to be top of mind whenever that other guy makes an error. So it's massively important for you to be just outreach, 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 outreach. Hey, I know you have X and X vendor, but all we ask is for the opportunity if it ever comes up. And you're just building rapport with these people, and slowly you will earn their trust depending on the circumstances, because a lot of people get comfortable. these big fleets, you would think that these other shops would not get complacent, but there's a lot of shops they'll get the big account and then they get complacent and they start neglecting and ignoring that account. And then all of a sudden, either the prices keep going up and it gets a little squirrely, or the turnaround time starts to get a little slower because they used to always fit them in first, but now they're like, yeah, you're just a normal customer, blah, blah, blah. And the expectations just don't match what they signed up for originally because there was change and complacency. So you just need to be at the right place at the right time and be top of mind when that customer decides to switch. So highly recommend cold calling. There will be a cold call script document attached to the workbook. That is a pretty darn good start that we leveraged in our business. And essentially, it's going to take some effort. It's about a 3 to 5% close ratio. So every 100 calls, you're going to have 3 or to 5 really solid leads from it, but they cost you $0. And this whole video is about scaling your business depending on your circumstance. And if you're just starting out, you don't have the capital, but you have time. And it is much better for you to be doing outreach than it is to be sitting at the shop doing nothing. So I highly recommend cold outreach if you've never done it before. You will learn more about your sales process. I actually think it's highly important for you to identify your sales process, dial that in before you ever spend money on ads. And what do I mean by that? I mean that if your sales process isn't dialed and you don't understand your value proposition and you're just a commodity and you're just, yeah, we're of this much and then, take it or leave it, that's not how you're going to grow your business. And if you start doing marketing and ads, like, you're just going to get a lot of people that only want a price shop, and then you truly just become a commodity. All you are is your price. There's no value backed behind it. But when you start doing cold calls, you learn how to navigate conversations so that you can truly solve people's problems that they possibly might not even understand that they have in the first place. So highly recommend cold calling. It will teach you a lot of skills. Obviously we have our general social medias, but I do want to put a side insert for LinkedIn. There's nobody on LinkedIn in the wrap space hardly, but LinkedIn is phenomenal because of the way the algorithm works. So if somebody reciprocates on your content in LinkedIn, it will actually show that to all the people that are in their network, if you will, on their news feed. And because there's a whole lot less just willy-nilly of adding people for the most part, you can actually infiltrate the algorithms for your communities pretty good, and or for some of your larger accounts. So that's just my 1 minute on LinkedIn. I haven't solved how to do LinkedIn entirely yet, but we're getting massively active on LinkedIn and seeing some pretty good results. So we'll close out the marketing component with ads. So Google ads, SEO, and Facebook ads. The biggest mistake with advertising is that most people want clients, not leads. Leads are a great deal of work. You have to push through all this data and reach out to them, creating more work for you just to find the next client. But the beauty of it is you can land customers who are not in your ecosystem, but then also ask them for referrals or infiltrate their networks. So it's a massive opportunity for you. Currently on Facebook, for example, we're trending around $20 to $26 a lead. This means that I can do 15, let's just call it, every 10 leads is $200. And I'm willing to easily pay $400 to $500 per close. That doesn't mean that's where we're at. We're at much less than that. But at $400 or $500 to earn the customer, and you're also priced correctly, then you have no issue with paying your staff. And then if you can optimize it, then you're getting back to where you're getting your net profit margin back to where it should be. And then you can start to turn the dial and tweak. So you can actually strategically hire based around your KPIs. And the point is, marketing and ads are more of a game of optimization and tweaking and refinement. It's okay for you to, what is the lifetime value of a customer? It's okay for you to spend, like, would I spend $2,000 to get my biggest customer? Yeah, because they've done 200 units with me. So would I pay $2,000 to get 200 units of lifetime value? Yes. So, this video is not necessarily on how to market, but it's what to think about while you're marketing. How are you going to differentiate yourself? Make sure that you have, let's just call it, an introductory packet whenever the lead comes in, some form of automation that goes out to the customer and says, hey, this is who we are, this is what we stand by, this is what you're going to expect, why is vehicle wraps important, etc., to where they're just getting drilled with emails upon opting into your ecosystem. You got to make sure that you're calling them many, many times over, especially the first 30 minutes that lead comes in. You should have already called them, period. And if you don't, then somebody else shop might have taken that lead already and made the impression that you should have made onto that lead. But leads are work. So just keep that in mind. This video is not going to go too much into ads because the biggest thing is optimization and having the structure and the framework, because getting the leads in doesn't seem to be very hard. It's creating the sales process to close the leads and generate the cash that you need to keep the ads on. Now, I've mentioned a couple times about, not being a commodity. So in your sales process, we've talked enough about, like, how are we getting our leads? Let's dive into a little bit of sales processes. Don't just give a quote over the phone, and for the love of God, don't just text, yeah, your wrap cost this, in just a text message. Like, be a difference maker, stand out. And one of the biggest things that you should be potentially doing is some form of, like, consultation framework. So when lead comes in for commercial wrap, instead of just saying, yeah, what do you need? It's like, I need a wrap on a F350. It's like, cool, it's $4,250. Like, you don't know their goals, you don't know what their growth plan is, you don't know, like, how long they've been in business, you don't know shit. And what are people's favorite thing to do? Talk about themselves. So they will object that they just want a prize. But the person who's going to win is the person that they like the most, not necessarily just the price that they like the most. There is also the person they like the most is who they're going to buy from. So you need to try your best to schedule a meeting with that customer and start building trust. It's like, hey man, how long have you been running your HVAC business? Or hey, how long have you been in the car scene? And just talking, well, what other cars have you had before? Have you ever done this before? Have you, how many vehicles do you have in your fleet? Like, you're just creating a series of questions based on whatever service it is that you are selling. But you need to create a process in that to where you also know their goals. Let's just say, let's actually drive that point home, why you should be booking a meeting. So let's just say it's one unit and they buy from you and it's $4,500 for the unit, and you didn't ask them any questions. And come to find out, they have like 3 other businesses. And maybe they are local or they're not local. The point is, you don't know about it. So you're just going to be like, okay, cool. And you're going to ignore that customer now. You're going to go work on all these other new leads or go work on all these other things. And you're never going to follow up with that customer. And then 2 years later, they forget you exist. Like, it happens. And then they go just Google search again, and then they find the next person. They did like a 10 vehicle fleet because they're going through a growth phase with one of their other businesses. Like, It is important to extract as much information from that customer as possible, put it into a CRM, and understand who your customer is. What are their buying patterns? How often do they purchase vehicles for their fleet? How often do they like a big question that nobody asks anybody is, what's typically your revolution for your vehicles? How long do you keep them in their fleet? I have a customer that legitimately will not allow for a unit in their fleet to be older than I think it's 2 years. And they revolve their units every 2.5 years. And so I know that if they haven't purchased from me in, let's just say, a year and a half, that I need to go ahead and be reaching out to that person because they're going to have a large 10 or 15 vehicle cycle that's going to be coming through soon. I need to be top of mind in case for some reason they decide to rebid the project rather than just take them to me. I would much rather be completely top of mind where it's like, hey, I think about you outside of the times that you are looking to spend money, essentially. I'm building relationships. And that's all you're doing with a consultation approach is you're building a relationship greater than just a transaction. So if you want to grow and scale your vehicle wrap shop, don't be a commodity. If you're a boutique style shop, highly recommend inviting the people to your shop. I know people like Danny Martinez in California who he literally will not give a price over the phone. You have to physically come to his shop and go through his onboarding process in order to get a quote because he's so thorough. He asks you what is the right criteria for the materials we're going to use. Are you looking for specialty laminates? Are we going to do a theme wrap? Is this a commercial wrap? Whatever it may be. So identify, in the workbook will be a series of questions of how you can kind of create this framework. But the number one driving factor here is how are you going to be different? How are people going to remember you? And why should people pick you? Another point in the sales process is massively important. I think on the retail sector, they do this very well because they can, but like your window tint and your PPF, like they have like menu boards, right? For the pricing and they control, do you want a number 1, number 2, number 3, and number 4? And then would you like fries with that? All your accessory options that kind of go with that product. I think there's a huge opportunity in the vehicle wrap space for especially the commercial side where you should be optimizing how quickly you can set up an estimate for a customer, meaning doing a lot of math up front to find what is the median range for a certain section of vehicles. And then you can actually provide an estimate to the customer in minutes, effectively increasing or effectively reducing how much labor you have, for example, to onboard a new admin or salesperson on your team. But you're also getting the estimates to the customers faster and closing more deals. So I would invest some time, if you haven't already, in creating some form of professional quote system to where you can generate an estimate in 20 minutes or less. Because a lot of people are pushing the pencil repeatedly on the same exact products, and it's completely unnecessary. The use of visual aids is really nice. And in fact, the fact that we have our pricing already pre-done in a menu format for like an iPad. We never email this to the customers, but that's what we use to generate our estimates. Builds confidence that we're not, blowing smoke up there. We're not just generating a price essentially out of thin air. It shows integrity and confidence as to why we are where we are. And it's organized. And it's like, okay, if these guys are this organized up front, then I feel confident that they'll stand behind their turnaround claims and all the other things that they have in place. And then play with your payment terms. I highly recommend everybody getting a deposit for all projects. If you're not getting deposits, you might have waste in your schedule because you're allowing people not to show up. But the most basic methodology is 50-50. And I know some people who won't bend on that. That's not a right or wrong answer, but recently we've been playing with an option where the customer can pay a smaller initial price, which is essentially the design fee itself, and then pay the half remaining upon our approval to get started with printing, and then they pay the final amount at the end. And me and my ops manager had a great debate about this, and she was like, why would I ever take less when I'm already able to get 50% down on most people? I was like, yeah, but the salesperson is struggling to get that because he's not necessarily as confident as you are in the process. So how do we multiply your efforts creating a larger volume or velocity of units flowing through the door? And what we came up with was the design fee up front, but the ops manager completely objected to um, that initial process. But what they came up with later, and this is why hiring rock stars is important. They think independently, and they also solve problems if they're going to buck you on certain things. And the proposed solution was that if we do a design fee only, that they don't get priority scheduling. And so that's the pain point that we create. It's a fictitious pain point that if you want priority scheduling to follow our standard turnaround times and parameters, then it's 50% down. But if it's something that you're concerned about the opt-in price because you've been burned before in the past, then we can just do the art fee and you won't pay a penny more. But you won't go on to priority scheduling based on the schedule. So you can kind of play with your offer, and this way you can like leverage different offers and tools to fill in the gaps of the calendar depending on how that customer's buying patterns are, et cetera, to try to close that sale. A very unpopular slash uncommon thing in sales and marketing is actually customer experience and retention, uh, even very more specifically post sale. So the installation is where good shops become legendary shops. A lot of people think that the finish line is when the job is complete. However, it's actually the starting line for lifetime value. Um, this is how you kind of take your C and B tier clients and try to ascend them to either a C to a B or B to an A is um, improving and refining the customer experience and the retention metrics within the business. So let's just say, like in our shop, if you take a deposit, our team has a certain amount of time to get the customer a proof. Once the proof is sent, there are automations that follow up with the customer on the proofing process. And then once the proof is approved, it gets scheduled. Now, when it gets scheduled, a lot of us have gone like barbershops and we get the appointment confirmations. Um, we run the same type of methodology, but what we do is one step further. If the customer is dropping it off, very, very specifically commercial job, we also include a how to prepare for your drop off website link, and it will literally outline like, hey, here's our shop. We're excited to meet you. Make sure that the vehicle is clean. If it's not clean, we're going to charge you for a cleaning fee. And this is the day of your arrival. Please make sure it's on time. If not, then it can delay our process and delay us getting the vehicle back to you, and also possibly charge you a kill fee if the vehicle doesn't show up that day. So we're holding the customer accountable to our terms and conditions, but we're doing it in a very friendly slash professional manner. And we also back the reasons as to why it's important. Again, our business focuses on turnaround time and making sure that the utilization rate of the vehicle is very high. Now, during the install, there should be, like when the vehicle is dropped off, a lot of times, especially in the commercial world, this is even more important in the retail world, but the commercial world, sometimes the employee is dropping it off, not even the owner. And we need to do some form of check-in inspection. So this way that the customer understands exactly how the vehicle was dropped off, and there's never emotion brought into the thing, because you can, even if the customer is right that they didn't know that something existed, you having the evidence will help dissolve a confrontation to where um, maybe it's like, oh, well, that sucks. And then cool, like they continue to use you. But if you don't have any documentation, then it's just your word versus theirs, and it turns into an emotional debacle. So it's great to serve the customer to a high level by having these accountability metrics in place. Now, during the installation, making sure that everything is documented, that you have quality control pictures once the unit is done. Again, showing that uh, the vehicle is in a specific condition to where, again, I had an incident where a car was picked up. We did ceramic coating and PPF, and then the guy calls me and he's like, "Hey, there's this big gouge on the side of my car. You did that. I want it corrected." And it was on a Tesla. And I was like, "Well, can you show me?" And at the time, new shop, I didn't have camera systems. I was like, "Well, can you show me on your Sentry system where we actually hit the vehicle?" And he couldn't. But he still swore we did uh, this scratch. He's like, "I can even see the microfibers where you guys tried to polish it off." I was like, "Well, I mean, if we have paint there and we can polish it, like you would never know that we even scratched your car in the first place because we know how to polish cars." But and it was a very minor scratch. It wasn't even past the clear coat. I was like, "Well, I'm so sorry this happened to you, but like, what do you want to do?" But I did not have pictures, and that was my fault of our completed work of the job. And had I think he would have been pretty reasonable. But he ended up leaving us a bad review, even though we also painted the door. But I can never take away the fact that he had a brand new vehicle with a repainted door after it left our shop. And I think what happened was his significant other picked up the car and the car got scratched at a Walmart parking lot or something along those lines, and they just wanted to blame us. But once somebody commits to something like that, they're just going to stay to it. So you having that evidence um, will help you massively have a lot less emotional conversations in your business. Now, I've seen this with a couple of shops. I don't personally do this, but like Brennan with Maryville Wraps recently hired a person on staff that their job outside of doing the ads for their business is to document the change or the process of the before and after in a very professional manner, and they watermark the images and they just give it to the customer as an extra perk. And then the customer feels like insanely like awesome, like, "Oh man, this is amazing." And then they go post it on all their social medias, but it has his logo on the bottom corner and is directly attributed to more work. Once the install is complete, I highly recommend having yourself or an administrative person 2 weeks later calling the customer and just saying, "Hey, we're checking in to see if everything was as desired, yes or no." Because some customers won't complain, they'll just disappear. And then some customers are, they love everything you did. And if you didn't already get a 5-star review, you need to get your 5-star review. And then that's also your opportunity to ask for recommendations. So I would have on the post follow up of a sale a 2 week, a 6 month, a 1 year, and a 2 year follow up process with that customer to ensure that you stay top of mind and remind them why you are the vehicle wrap provider for them. Everything I just went over is a lot of individual components that need to be done, and it's a lot of work. But these are the things that consecutively compound and help you grow your business year over year over year. Because the hardest thing to do is acquire a new customer. It's easier to keep reselling your existing customer base. And so you need to have a really good customer success program, but also another way to feed in more customers into your ecosystem to continue to create that customer success, which then creates a very magnetic, attractive company in your area, and you can become a powerhouse because you're clearly the relevant source of what needs to be done in that area. Pick a few of these things at first to really dial in, and then over time start to optimize for some of the other things, because it's a lot. Even myself, there's a lot that I can improve on and that we're constantly working on in my own shop. But I have tried some form of derivative of just about all of these things, and they all work, and they're all massively important for your vehicle wrap business to grow and scale.